Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today's Monday, which means it's time for an episode of Loadout, the series where you guys, the viewers, get to pick a gun and customization for me to use. The way you do this is you leave a comment down below letting me know what kind of weapon and accessories you'd like me to run with, and I will pick one of the top rated comments for the next episode. Today's top comment comes from Mr. Chelseaman30. He says, the Australian Special Forces soldier, M4 Carbine, holographic sight, laser sight, muzzle brake, stubby grip, ERDL desert camo, M9 pistol, no attachments, M18 claymore, M224 mortar or ammo box, M67 frag, bayonet, perimeter defense field upgrade. Use the mortar and frag grenade to gain the upper hand on your enemy by clearing them out of their stationary location. Use the claymore to deny the enemy from gaining progress into your place of stationary location. Also use the bayonet as a primary tactic when flanking your enemy in order to remain stealthy and unseen. Hey LevelCap, love your Loadout series, hope you'll someday choose mine, big fan, keep up the good work, shout out to fellow Aussies out there. And it certainly has been a little while since I've done an M4 Carbine loadout. I'm always looking for an excuse to use this carbine. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that it's burst fire, but you know what, I just like the M4 as a weapon in general, and it's really nice to play with it again just because it's so cool. I mean, it really is one of the most popular military and law enforcement weapons in the United States, at least. I know it's heavily used around the world, and obviously used with the Australian Special Forces with this cool EOTech sight. Now this sight in game is called the Holo sight, which is because it uses holographic technology to put up the targeting reticle on the actual optic itself. In real life, it's made by a company called EOTech, and it's essentially been nicknamed the EOTech sight because it is the one sight that they are really well known for. Now, there's not a lot of burst fire weapons in Battlefield 4. We've got the M4 and the M16A4, and then there's some burst fire weapon options for a few other guns out there. In Battlefield 3, there was a few more burst fire weapons, some of which were actually really highly regarded, like the AN-94, which had a 2-round burst that was incredibly accurate. Now, the M4 isn't necessarily a bad carbine, but it's very difficult to use, and there's very little reason to pick it over some of the fully auto counterparts that it has. Through several patches, DICE has actually tried to make M4 and the M16 more usable by changing the first shot recoil multiplier to the last shot of the burst. So you got a 3-round burst rather than hitting that first shot recoil multiplier, making your 2 follow-up rounds less accurate. They've actually put the higher recoil multiplier on the last shot of the 3-round burst. So hopefully you get 3 more accurate shots, and then after that the gun's going to kick back a bit more, making your essentially second burst less accurate overall. I can't say I'm a huge fan in general of just how the weapons feel and how accurate they are. At least in Battlefield 3, the burst fire weapons had a better base aiming down sight accuracy, whereas the M4 in this has the exact same base accuracy as any other carbine available, which is a .3 ADS. Also, the recoil is not that impressive overall, and for an 800 round per minute rate of fire, it's not going to really do you any favors, considering it's going to be very hard to actually hit that maximum 800 rounds per minute. You have to tap fire at the perfect intervals to make that sort of seamless transition from one burst to the next. It also has a surprising amount of first shot recoil of 2.5, and it's got a very, very hard pull to the right. So putting up accurate follow-up bursts in a very quick succession to your initial burst, it's going to be very difficult, and you always have to burst twice. 3 rounds at 25 damage maximum is not going to drop anybody unless you put 2 rounds in the chest and 1 in the head. If they have defensive perk, forget about it. And on top of that, it's got to be an extreme close quarter to get that anyway. So you're going to need at minimum 2 bursts to take down your opponent, usually more like 3 or 4. Now you'll notice I actually opted to go with the mortar this time around. It's especially good on TDM Siege of Shanghai, picking off those rooftop campers, and I actually managed to get a few there and blow up some of their claymores or C4, whatever the heck they had planted against the side of that elevator, as people like to do in this map for some reason. I can't imagine what it's like to elevator camp all around. It's gotta be boring as heck. Although I don't use the mortar too frequently, one of the more effective tactics that I found with it is to go off to the corner of the map, find a good location to place it, Put it down, fire off at least 3 or 4 of your rounds in the start, try and get some kills or at least flush the enemy out, then run forward, engage in the action. If you ever find that you run into somebody hiding behind something, you can always quickly switch to your mortar, put a few rounds down there, and then quickly switch back to your primary even before the rounds land. If the rounds don't end up killing your opponent, then you can at least shoot them as they try and change locations. I've always thought of the perimeter defense setup as a mostly useless perk, but I will say once I got it upgraded all the way, the ability to put down 3 claymores on any map was extremely aggravating for the enemy team, but I can't say that's really my style of play. I never like getting killed by claymores, and I always feel kind of dirty when I do it to somebody else. I will say though, the irony of the field upgrade for this class is that it actually came in handy because I was using claymores and the mortar instead of an ammo box, so I actually did need the extra ammo as I did run out several times throughout the game. Now we're playing Rush on Parasol Storm, I'm attacking, and we've managed to clear past the first 2 set of MCOMs, which are arguably the 2 hardest MCOMs. I've never really understood why they set up Rush the way they did in BF4, making often the first 2 MCOMs the hardest of the MCOMs. It seems like it should be the other way around. Regardless, we did manage to clear off the 2 MCOMs, and then we were able to actually progress through the map and enjoy the rest of the setting on Parasol Storm. Now, as much as I hate to admit it, the M4 is not bad for taking out targets to medium to long-ish range, but if they're moving around, pulling some maneuvers on you, it's going to be really tricky. I've always found it much easier to track my targets and hit follow-up shots when I have a fully auto weapon. Clicking and tapping that fire button while dragging the mouse at the same time, it's not necessarily a super advanced skill, but for minute aiming changes and stuff like that, it can be a little bit tricky. Some people on PC anyway have been known to actually map their fire button to a button on the keyboard so that when you click or tap the fire button, it doesn't mess with the movement of your mouse. This is kind of an interesting tactic, something that I've always shied away from because it's so against the basic control setup, and I thought it would just always kind of get in the way of trying to configure my controls for new games, but it is kind of an interesting concept and something that I always think about. Now, I actually haven't talked about key mapping in quite a while, and that is actually an important tactic of playing the game. What keys do you hit a lot while you're in the action? What keys might you need to hit very quickly without jeopardizing your aim or taking your fingers off of key buttons on your mouse? Well, I actually have mapped a lot of crucial buttons to my thumb buttons. One of them is toggle primary, is on my thumb, and that allows me to switch between my pistol and primary. If I have a rocket launcher out, I can just hit that button very quickly to switch back to my primary, and it avoids me having to reach up and hit the number buttons above my WASD keys, so I can still maintain complete mobility while changing weapons. Make sure you're taking advantage of all the buttons on your mouse so that you can maintain complete mobility and dexterity while performing complex tasks. Overall, I enjoyed this loadout. I recognize that the M4 is not one of the greatest carbines out there, but it is fun to sort of get back to it, and I just love the visual appeal of the M4 anyway. Don't forget to leave your loadout comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing out.